research on attachment and attachment styles in humans really got going with a research methodology developed by this woman, Mary Ainsworth, and it's called the strange situation procedure. And here's how it goes. A young child comes into a research laboratory with their primary caregiver, and usually the mother. Although guys out there, please go into developmental research and study this phenomenon between child and father pairs, because the work hasn't really been done. Anyway, caregiver and child enter this room. It's a brand new room, it's a waiting room, it has some toys, and the child starts to play with some of the toys. And then at a certain point, the caregiver leaves the room, so mom walks out, and a new person walks in. All right. Most children, when they're in a strange situation and their caregiver leaves, they get upset. When a stranger arrives, they get upset. So this technique involves some distress, normally, amongst the children. After a few minutes, the stranger leaves and the primary caregiver, usually the mother, returns. And the question is, how does the infant act while the mother is gone and after the mother returns? If the child can be comforted or reassured by the mother's return, then that's one kind of attachment style. You'll see that's a secure attachment. But if the child cannot be consoled, even after an extended period of time, then that might be an indication of an insecure attachment or connection with their primary caregiver. Let's see a brief video of that phenomenon.
This experiment, which I watched through a two-way mirror, is designed to gauge how secure is the crucial relationship between mother and child.
Okay, this bunny is going to go here, and that bunny will be on top.
The value of the test has been established in studies that would watch a child, 1-year-old, and then follow it up and interview them about their relationships to their parents when they were 21 years old. So we're quite confident in the long-term significance of this relationship.
After several minutes' play, the mother is signaled to leave the room.
Sweetie, I'll be back in 1 minute. I'll get you back in 1 minute.
I'm sitting for you. So, I feel that she'll survive. The key moment in the experiment is the child's reaction to her mother's return.
The important clue is whether the baby's able to become calmed down by the contact with the mother, get back to play. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes. You see, when the mother was out, she was only interested in the mother, no interest in the toys. Now she has a contact with the mother. She's beginning to show a little interest in the environment, and shortly she'll be right back with the toys where we started.
So you would call this a secure one?
Yes, yes. Goes to the door following her. Now, we sent the mother right back in, but the point here is not to distress the baby. We're just trying to challenge it. The baby puts her hands to her face, a sad expression, puts her face down. When she picks her up, she keeps her head down, her arms out, and then she sits in the chair holding the baby. The baby's still sullen. He's low-keyed.
So you would call this insecure attachment?
Yes, insecure. He's avoidant. He's not engaging her, and the reunion's not effective. And it's important to remember here that the thing that upset him was her absence. Her return should be the solution to his problem.
Interesting, right? Okay. So the assumption with attachment style, and there's quite a bit of evidence to support this assumption, is that the style of attachment that you have with your primary caregiver, say your mother or your father or one of your grandparents, that attachment style shapes the kinds of relationships that you have for the rest of your life. The idea being that the first relationship that you develop colors or shapes all of your subsequent relationships, that it defines what you think a relationship is. In collaboration with a researcher named John Bowlby, Mary Ainsworth developed 4 different attachment styles. One of them is a secure attachment style, and then there are 3 insecure attachment styles: ambivalent, avoidant, and disorganized. And we're going to talk about each of those. Now, I said that attachment style developed as a child is thought to shape attachment styles as an adult. Now, you can't remember, most likely, what your childhood attachment was to your primary caregiver. However, you can look at your adult relationships, and the 4 types of attachment can also be seen in adult relationships. So, some people in their relationships are very cool and comfortable. They know that they love you, and they know that you love them. And if something happens between the 2 of you, there's a fight or somebody leaves, that's not really a big problem because they know that you'll be able to mend the relationship. That's a secure relationship. The other 3, the green, the orange, and the blue squares here, are 3 types of insecure attachment styles. So let's start with clingy, which is a disorganized attachment style. If you are in a relationship with somebody who is very clingy, they need to be constantly reassured of your love for them and that you will not leave them, that may be an indication that they have an attachment style, an insecure attachment style, known as disorganized. If somebody is, stalker, if someone has an ambivalent attachment style, then they want to have a relationship with you, but they're afraid of the relationship at the same time. They're sort of ambivalent. So they'll say things like, "You're too good for me, you're just going to end up hurting me anyway." That would be an ambivalent attachment style. And then the last one, avoidant attachment style, is the person who says, I'm better off alone. I don't trust you. I'll take care of things myself. And that would be a reflection of someone who learned as a child that they're better off alone than depending on someone else. Okay, but let's go back now. Now that you've thought about those attachment styles as an adult, let's go back and think about them in terms of childhood. So obviously the goal is to have a secure attachment style. And what can we say about children who have secure attachment styles? Well, they feel safe. When their caregiver is around, they're comfortable exploring new people, new situations. They're still going to be, a little afraid of new things, as babies are, but they understand their caregiver as a safe place that they can always return to. Babies who feel securely attached believe or understand in their hearts that if they have some need, that their caregiver will satisfy that need and be responsive. There is an important connection between attachment style and parenting style. And in this case, a child who is securely attached may have a parent who is in tune with the child's emotional state and different kinds of needs. An adult who has a secure attachment style can create deep, meaningful relationships, and they're able to set appropriate boundaries. What is okay in the relationship and what is not okay in the relationship. Okay, and then remember there's 3 types of insecure attachments. So let's start with ambivalent. A child who has an ambivalent attachment style is going to be extremely uncomfortable around strangers. Not a little bit, that's all children, but extremely, like I never want to see a person I don't know. And ambivalent attachment styles means even when you see something scary or a new person, you can't return to your caregiver for comfort. Now this attachment style is fairly rare, about 10% of the population. It's thought to be associated with parenting styles in which the parent is inconsistent. ambivalent. Sometimes they're there for you, sometimes they're not, and the baby just has no way of knowing whether their needs will be met or not. An adult who has an ambivalent attachment style will seem very anxious in their relationships, very unsure of whether they can depend on another person. They might be very blaming and controlling, trying really hard to manage their anxiety by blaming it on the behaviors of other people rather than realizing that they are bringing the anxiety to their relationships. The next type of insecure attachment style is avoidant. Children who have avoidant attachment styles basically avoid their caregivers. They are just as comfortable with strangers as they are with their caregivers. They're not really attached to, connected with, dependent upon their caregivers. The parenting style that's associated with children who develop an avoidant attachment style typically includes parents who are rejecting or not there for their child. They're unavailable in some way. And as an adult, people with avoidant attachment styles, they're really loners, right? They don't want to be close to other people. That makes them uncomfortable. They're distant. They can be very critical. They can be very rigid. Anything they need to do to justify staying away from other people. Finally, the disorganized attachment style. It's sort of a complicated one. There isn't a clear sign of attachment. It seems to be sort of a mixture of resisting and ambiguous. In fact, some researchers don't even use the disorganized attachment style as a type. Parents who are associated with children who develop a disorganized attachment style either ignore their child or just see that their child needs something and don't care. Sometimes it's parents who have very scary behaviors towards their children. Adults who have a disorganized attachment style can be abusive, they can have a really short temper, really insensitive, cruel, and at the same time, they're craving closeness. So it's a very confused state. What determines attachment style? Well, a lot of it is how sensitive is your primary caregiver to your needs and wants and desires. Another determinant is something that's innate. When babies are born, they have certain tendencies that seem to be wired with them. Some babies are just fussy, right? They never seem to be comfortable. Other babies are very cool, calm, and collect. Parents describe them as being very easy babies. So it's like a personality trait, and it's innate. And what's really, really important is the match between the caregiver and the child's temperament. Does a child have a temperament that the caregiver can live with or manage or is comfortable with, right? So if the child is really laid back and cool and happy, but a parent is like micromanaging and really anxious all the time, that can create a problem. If the baby is very anxious and has a lot of needs, but the parent isn't able to address those needs or recognize the needs, that can create problems too. Usually when I give this lecture, some people ask, what about daycare? Does daycare create problems for attachment formation? And generally speaking, the answer is no. It depends a lot on the quality of the daycare. Most daycare is quite good, and the people who work in daycare centers know what attachment is, and they are supportive, they address children's needs and work with them. So good daycare doesn't create any problems for attachment. Now, what does good daycare look like? Well, each child has to get adequate attention to their needs, right? If there's so many children that the daycare workers can't give quality attention to each child, that's a problem. You want a daycare center that encourages language development and sensory motor development. Climbing, playing with things, learning how to, fine motor skills like how to use scissors safely. You also want a daycare center that worries about your child's health and their safety. You want a daycare center that has a very warm and comforting feel to it. When you walk in, does it feel safe? There's also different parenting styles. The most successful parenting style is an authoritative parenting style. And that is a parent who has high expectations but sets clear limits and boundaries. What you want to do as a parent is to make it very clear what is and isn't acceptable, but to make those boundaries big enough so that the child has room to explore and make mistakes and have successes. So an authoritative parent communicates well with their child, sets clear expectations, and sets reasonable boundaries that deal with the need for both independence but safety. There's also a different parenting style called authoritarian. So authoritative versus an authoritarian, which is sort of a dictator, right? So you can think of that as a dictator parenting style. You do what I tell you to do, and I don't want to hear anything about it. That would be an authoritarian parenting style. So very demanding. They expect their child to never have questions, to never challenge them by asking why, absolute obedience, and completely unresponsive to the child's needs. There's also a permissive parenting style. This is a parenting style that maybe teenagers really like, which is a permissive parenting style is, you do whatever you want to do. I don't care, right? They're undemanding. They let their children do whatever they please. That's not good because the boundaries are not clear and they're not followed. And the uninvolved parent is the parent who just ignores their kid, right? They provide shelter and food and a bed, but little else. Okay, come back. We'll talk about theory of mind.